What if a single leaked document could push the world to the brink of catastrophe? This is not a hypothetical. Recently, a fragment of an internal document from the Trump administration was leaked, and its contents shocked political circles worldwide. The document revealed a chilling condition. The United States would send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, but only if those missiles were used to strike the Kremlin itself. Let that sink in. Not a strike on military infrastructure, not a strike on a remote base, but a direct hit on the very heart of Russian political power. The leak instantly set off a political firestorm, exposing a level of risk-taking that even seasoned diplomats called reckless. This is no longer about helping Ukraine defend its borders. It is about using the Ukraine conflict as a pawn in a much larger, far more dangerous geopolitical game, one in which old rules are being rewritten in real time, and the stakes may be nothing less than global stability. If these power moves go unchecked, the world could spiral into open conflict between nuclear-armed nations, a scenario too dangerous to ignore. Suddenly, the question is not just about who is winning on the battlefield, but who is really pulling the strings behind the scenes. To understand just how we arrived at this moment, and why the timing of this leak matters more than you think, let's trace how this secret deal unfolded. In the next section, we will break down how this covert agreement came to light, and how it fundamentally shifted the balance between East and West. Why would the United States make its supply of powerful Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine depend on such a provocative move, a direct strike at the Kremlin itself? This is not just about weapons or battlefield tactics. The leak of a secret condition, that Ukraine would only receive these advanced missiles if they agreed to launch an attack at the very heart of Russian power, exploded onto the world stage at the same moment as Donald Trump's bold public claims. He boasted he could end the Ukraine conflict in just one day. Many dismissed this as empty rhetoric, but behind closed doors, the reality was far more complex and dangerous. Inside Washington, Trump's team was torn. Military leaders demanded action, while voters wanted peace. The proposed compromise was as risky as it was strategic. Arm Ukraine, but only on the condition that they strike Moscow directly, sending a message that no one could ignore. Secret meetings in the White House brought together generals, advisors, and political strategists, all aiming for one thing: using Ukraine as a lever to pressure Russia into making concessions, or at least to cement Moscow's image as a global threat. For Ukraine, there was no middle ground. The message from the West was clear: no daring strike, no more support. Zelensky and his government faced an ultimatum: accept the risk of devastating escalation, or lose the vital backing needed for survival. The entire country's fate was reduced to a single gamble, demanded by allies whose interests were shifting. This is the new normal in international politics: ultimatums, leaks, and secret deals shaping the very existence of a nation. Ukraine's sovereignty and survival now depended not only on its own choices, but also on the high-stakes strategies of powers far beyond its borders. But while Washington and Kyiv debated their next move, Moscow was not idle. Russian intelligence watched every step, readying a response that would shock the world. So what exactly did Russia do when the secret plan came to light? The answer would change the rules of the entire conflict. What happens when secret plans are met with even deadlier secrets? The world watched in silent disbelief as the next chapter of this shadow war erupted overnight. No sooner had American military advisors landed in Kyiv than Russian intelligence picked up disturbing signals, unusual troop movements, and bursts of encrypted communications near Kharkiv and Dnipro. It was clear that something big was unfolding, but no one expected what came next. In the dead of night, Russian missile strikes thundered down, targeting underground bunkers buried deep beneath Ukrainian soil. These were not random targets. They were precise hits on sites known to House American instructors and key communication officers, the very people orchestrating operations on Ukraine's eastern front. The accuracy was chilling. Russia's missiles found their mark as if guided by hands that already knew the coordinates. Analysts soon whispered the unthinkable. Had someone inside Ukraine leaked vital information? The possibility that Russia's intelligence had penetrated Western plans sent shockwaves through every command center from Kyiv to Washington. As the sun rose, chaos reigned in the Ukrainian command structure. Entire teams had gone silent. Coordination between units broke down with alarming speed. For the first time since the war began, Kyiv offered no explanation. The government's response was a hush, punctuated only by vague statements and a refusal to confirm the scope of the disaster. In Washington, the silence was just as telling. There was no public condemnation, no call for escalation. Behind closed doors, officials struggled to assess the loss of both personnel and prestige. Even Western media, typically quick to shape the narrative, acknowledged, cautiously, that Ukraine had suffered heavy losses and that military coordination was faltering. The implications are stark. If Russia can intercept Western moves so thoroughly, NATO's credibility is left hanging by a thread, and every Allied advisor on Ukrainian territory is now under direct threat. The war's rules have changed overnight, exposing vulnerabilities that once seemed unthinkable. But this was not just a battlefield setback. It was a seismic warning to global powers. As both sides reassess their next moves, the stakes have never been higher. The aftermath of this attack would force world leaders to confront a chilling new reality, one where every secret can be exposed, and even the strongest alliances can be shaken overnight. When the rules change overnight, who adapts and who falters? In moments of crisis, the difference between survival and collapse can be measured in minutes, and this escalation proved just how quickly the ground can shift beneath global powers. Within hours of the Tomahawk missile deal leaking, President Putin issued a blunt, unmistakable warning. If Ukraine receives those missiles, and if a strike on the Kremlin even appears imminent, Russia will answer in kind, swiftly, and without hesitation. The world was left in no doubt that any delivery would trigger an immediate, symmetrical Russian response. Europe, caught off guard by both the leak and Moscow's reaction, began to distance itself from the rising military tensions. Leaders in capitals from Berlin to Paris called publicly for restraint and dialogue, wary of being dragged into an uncontrollable spiral. Behind closed doors, officials scrambled to assess the risk, knowing that the stakes had jumped from political maneuvering to the real possibility of open warfare. Yet as Europe sought de-escalation, the situation on the ground in Ukraine deteriorated fast. Without the usual American coordination, the lifeblood of Ukrainian defense planning, command structures fractured. Units in key regions lost contact with their headquarters, and orders from Kyiv grew confused. Russian forces seized this moment, pushing forward and exploiting the growing panic in the Ukrainian capital. Inside Kyiv, fear replaced confidence, as the realization dawned that the usual Western support was no longer guaranteed. In Washington and other Western capitals, the magnitude of the crisis finally sank in. Escalation now meant casualties too large to hide, and the risk of a direct Russia-NATO confrontation loomed. Quietly, policymakers began to reconsider further arms deliveries. The fear was no longer just about losing face, but about triggering a conflict that could spiral far beyond Ukraine's borders. Suddenly, alliances showed their fault lines. Long-standing assumptions about coordination and shared risk started to crumble. The world watched in real time as the risk of miscalculation, misunderstanding, and catastrophic escalation soared. So what lessons can be drawn from this sudden and dangerous shift? And how might it reshape the conflict, the alliances, and the very nature of global power going forward? What signals should we watch for as the world inches ever closer to the edge? In these chaotic times, even a single leak, a sudden change in official tone, or a strange silence from a usually vocal nation can be far more revealing than any headline. The smallest hint, a document emerging by accident, a key speech delayed, or a press conference canceled, can signal a massive shift brewing just beneath the surface. We are now living in a new reality, where Russia no longer hesitates to respond with overwhelming force to anything it sees as a threat to the core of its power. The night strikes and precise retaliation sent a clear message. Any attempt to challenge Moscow's authority will be answered swiftly and without ambiguity. Old rules and slow diplomatic warnings are gone. Now the consequences are immediate and often irreversible. Meanwhile, Ukraine's destiny is being shaped less by decisions made in Kyiv and more by the unpredictable calculations of leaders in distant capitals. What happens next depends not on clear strategies, but on shadowy deals, shifting alliances, and the personal ambitions or fears of people we rarely see on camera. In this environment, one wrong move or misunderstood signal could trigger escalation or sudden abandonment. For all of us watching, the lesson is simple but urgent. Understanding these hidden dynamics is no longer just the job of diplomats or intelligence agencies. If we want to make sense of today's news, to pressure our leaders, or even to prepare for sudden shocks, we must learn to read between the lines. Ignoring the warning signs leaves us at risk of being blindsided by changes that shake the world, and losing whatever influence or preparation we might have had. Now, let's bring all these threads together to face the uncomfortable truth. But what exactly is the uncomfortable truth that emerges from this new landscape? And how far could these risks go? Let's confront it head-on. History may look back on this as the night the rules were rewritten. Are you ready for what comes next? Tonight, the truth is undeniable. The world's most dangerous crisis is now being driven not just by open conflict, but by leaks, by power struggles, and by leaders who answer to no one but themselves. A single secret, exposed at the wrong moment, can now trigger events that spiral far beyond anyone's control. All it takes is one document, one whispered condition, and the balance of global power can tip overnight. The Ukraine war is no longer a straightforward East versus West standoff. It has become a proving ground for hidden agendas, where backroom deals and covert threats set the tempo. The leaked Tomahawk missile agreement, tying lethal aid to an unprecedented strike on the very heart of Russian authority, was never meant for public eyes. But its emergence shows how fragile Western control has become, and how easily these power games can slip into chaos. Russia's response was not just military, it was a message. Precision strikes, delivered with chilling clarity, proved that the old rules of diplomacy are obsolete. There were no warnings, no denials, only action. And suddenly, those who thought they were pulling the strings found themselves exposed, vulnerable, and silent. At stake is not just the outcome of a single battle, or even a single war. Our collective safety, our freedoms, and the stability of the international system now hang in the balance. If escalation can begin with a single leak, who really holds power? What if the next secret, the next misstep, unleashes consequences no one can control? As confusion reigns in Western capitals and fear ripples through military ranks, a new reality is setting in. The world's most dangerous crisis is no longer shaped by grand strategies or careful negotiations. It is throttled forward by moments of madness, by the decisions of a handful of people behind locked doors, and by the secrets they can no longer contain. The question now is not just who fired the first shot, but who can stop the next one. If the rules have truly been rewritten, are we ready for what comes next?